Okay, so as you all know that the previous video had a lot of shortcomings because of the space constraints and everything, I'm showing you a very quick way of how to basically construct the coat pattern from a basic torso pattern. So I think the first step is basically to trace out the outline of our torso. So on your tracing papers or even on your pattern papers, the first thing that we do is we trace out, including the point where we have the darts. So these are like potential spaces. If we have to add the dart or no, that's a different story later on, but we have to basically at least mark the outlines. So one here for the shoulder and then one over here at the waist. Okay, so I have one over here at the waist as well, which I'm giving a little mark, and then we can decide on whether we have to add it or no later on. So once we are done with this, the first and foremost most important thing that we have to do is we have to add allowance again so that we can make sure that there is enough amount of space for wearing a trench coat. Now in every coat pattern, the most important thing is we make sure that there is space. So the first thing is from here I'm going to leave a space of around, not too much, but just say for example 1 centimeter. Okay, and the same thing I'm going to try to repeat over here as well as 1 centimeter, and I'm going to make it 1 centimeter over here. I think I would make it 1.5 centimeter around the hip line because we are going to be gradually increasing the space as and when we come down. Now the first step is we are going to use our measurements, which is expansion that we have for the length. So considering that, okay, so this is sort of like, a quicker pattern that I have just made so that you can understand the steps. So I'm just going to give an extension considering from the high shoulder point, which is over here. I'm giving an extension which we have taken. So I will be just giving an extension of around 30 centimeters. Now I'm doing 30 centimeters, which also corresponds to our 110 centimeters, which we use in a bigger scale. Since I'm using a smaller scale, I'm just going to go ahead with the same outline. So I'm marking the same point over here, and let us go ahead and connect it to the center front position. So the center front line, which we start from here, we go all the way up till this point. Then the next is we are looking at the space that we have, like the width. So for example, if I have a width of around 31 and I want to use 31, I want to add extra, then we can always make sure that we do something similar to that. So in this case, I want to give around maybe 13.5 centimeters as an extra width, which I have at the edge of our coat. Okay, so at the length, this is the amount of seam opening that I have. So which means if I see over here, I'm having a space which is quite different. So if I have to connect from my torso down as a straight line, I'm having certain amount of space extra, which is according to the measurement that I've taken. This is the amount of space that I need for my trench coat according to the design. So considering this, what I have to do right now is from this extra extension that I'm giving over here, I am supposed to basically start curving my lines in such a way that I get a proper outline. So this is the final level that we have. So I'm just going to keep over here so we can mark a straight line, which is going to help us. So considering the space, I'm just going to mark a straight line over here. Our job is basically to use this extra 1 centimeter space which we have given for an allowance, go along the same line. Of course, we are going to use a hip curve when we come down the hip line, and then gradually increase and join it to here. So this is in case if I want like a slightly curvy trench coat style, which could be something which can be done for a women's wear. On the other hand, if I want something more straight, okay, I can even go ahead and make it more boxy. So I can give like an A-line line all the way from your armhole straight down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give slightly a curvy pattern, which is why I'm going to increase the amount of allowance as and when I come down. So initially it was 1. Now it's going up to 1.5. Okay. So this is for 1.5. This is 2. And then when we are coming down over here, I'm going to increase it up to 2.5. Okay. So I have my spacing, which is done. So likewise, use the hip curve ruler, and I'm just going to use the straight ruler that I have, and I will start connecting the points together so we can kind of like, make the curve look a little bit more realistic. And likewise over here. So I'm just taking the lines down all the way from here till here. If I feel like it's too much of a curve, then I might just maybe even consider making it. I think this is too much of a curve, so maybe we can just go ahead and do a free hand. So I'll just do like a little freehand curve and gradually connect it to the lines. So what happens is, in this case, I'm not having too much of the curve line because it kind of doesn't reflect very nice in the case of a trench coat. It's not like a dress. Okay, this extension is required to be done only if we require an extra space. If we don't want something like that and we want something which is a little bit more straight, then we can just go ahead with a straight line as well. So this is totally up to our individual choice. So for example, if I want something which is very basic and not something too curvy, I can make a line which can be straight from the waist as well. So even this is also quite nice. Okay, so the side hemline is totally according to the kind of design and the choice that we have, but all the other details will remain a little bit more different. Okay, so we are going to go ahead and mark this line for the dart. So down around 3 centimeters, and here also I'm just going to go ahead and mark around I think around 4.5 centimeters from here. Okay, so this is kind of like giving an indication that this is the space where I have to consume my dart. Again, you will have to follow your measurements, not the ones that I'm doing over here, because this is sort of like just a make-believe pattern because of the space constraints that we had initially. Okay, so the same thing over here, we are going to be increasing down as well, and we are going to be connecting. Okay, now for the expansion part in the front, which is the lapel construction, most importantly, we have to basically give according to the measurement and the scale that we use. So 4.5 inches is generally what we use, which corresponds to around 12 centimeters, but we can make it slightly lesser as well, because if you do not want so much of an extension, then we can make it a little less. So right now what I'm doing is I will be just giving an expansion of 4.5 centimeters because of the scale that we're using right now. Okay, and I'm going to follow the same measurement in all the points. So at the waist, okay, at the hip line and the neckline as well. So I'm going to keep this and I'm going to join these points together. So whenever we are joining this, just make sure that you go beyond your neckline point. The reason is because we have to basically start curving later and then we have to make certain adjustments. So which is why we always give this line slightly more longer. Okay. Now, this is going to be the expansion which we require. In case if you just want a basic coat where you do not want to give too much of details, etc., then you can just use this ruler like this. Okay, and then we can slightly connect this. I'm just drawing this as a dotted line because this is not my final, but in case if I wanted a pattern where there's just an expansion which kind of falls while we are making the final garment, this would be my method. Okay, so I would just be doing this, but right now this is not what I want. I would want it slightly more detailed. Okay, so in such a case, one of the most important elements which we need to consider is how you are trying to recreate your neckline. Okay, so in this kind of a construction, one of the most important steps in creating the lapel part is also going ahead and making small changes. So at the neckline, from this point where the neckline finishes, we are going outside and giving an extension of almost 1.5 centimeters. Okay, so once you give an extension of 1.5 centimeter, we have to mark something which is called as a break point. Okay, so generally the break point is done. If this is our bust level, this is the bust point that we have, which is right, along the armhole line or even just a little bit below. So we'll just mark this point. We are just going to see where exactly these 2 points meet. So generally what happens, we have to mark this point and then from there we go down by at least 2 inches. So 2 inches would be around 5.5 centimeters. So from here I will give an extension of around 5.5 centimeter, which comes somewhere over here. And then I am just going to be joining these 2 points. So they do correspond quite well. So I'm just going to be joining these 2 points right now. Okay. Okay. So this is one extension that I'm making for the lapel part. All right, this is my construction of the lapel, which is coming along. It's not completed, but it is coming along. Now the next step that we have over here, because this was my extension, this was an extra measurement which we do not require, so I'm removing it. Okay, so once we have done this, the lapel and the outline is constructed. The next thing that we have to do is we have to shift our neckline by just a little bit of measurement. So right now I will be giving an extension over here, okay, by a 0.5 centimeter. So 0.5 centimeter extension where we are giving over here, which is like so much, 0.5 centimeter. And then we are going to retrace our neckline. So we will keep the curve as it is, and we are going to retrace the whole neckline outline. So like this, okay, so that it basically joins the neckline which we have initially constructed. So we are giving a little bit of a wider neck over here for the coat. Okay. Now once we have done so much, we have to mark this point over here. Let's label this as X. Okay. This we can label as A, and we can give this extension as around 1.5 centimeters, which we had marked. Okay. And now from this point, I'm just going to be going ahead and marking my extension for the lapel. Okay. So from this point, the first thing that I'm going to do is I will be going ahead along the same curve. I will mark 1 centimeter. So 1 centimeter comes somewhere over here. So this would be with the new neckline, 1 centimeter. Okay. And then using this 1 centimeter without using a curve, straight point, I will just go ahead and connect it. So this is basically you have to keep your ruler at a right angle to the neckline that you have done for the new point, and then we will just go ahead and straight connect wherever we are getting the point. So it might coincide to the point which we had initially done, or it might not. It's totally fine. So we have actually given an extension like this. So now we have constructed our lapel. This is basically the area for the notch. This is our new neckline, and we have almost all the basic outlines done. Now the next step that we have to do is the collar, which is kind of like the most important element when it comes to creating a coat design. Okay. So right now for the creating the collar, what we have to measure is the back neck. So you have to go to your previous pattern for the back torso. Let's measure the back neck line, and we are going to be adding that measurement towards here. So the most important thing that we have to do right now is we have to start tracing this, because we cannot be working on this scale. We have to work on a separate scale. So we'll use a tracing paper, and we're just going to trace out only the neckline and this lapel curve. Okay. So of course, this was something which I had done previously for the bigger pattern, but let me show you in a new one. Okay, so now I have my fresh tracing paper. I'm going to start making the collar pattern. So for the collar, the first step is, as it is, I'm going to keep the tracing sheets here and leaving a little bit of extra space towards the upper half, because we need this space for constructing the collar. I am just going to be basically tracing out the outline, okay, of the neckline, the new neckline. Okay, so in this case, it's actually gone a little bit more deeper outside. You do not have to make it so deep. We can actually make it a little bit more closer to our neckline, which we have initially created. So because this is a much smaller pattern, which I have kind of manipulated for everyone to understand, which is why it looks a little bit more, you know, wider for the neck. Your patterns would not be having so much of a distance. Okay, so we are just going to be only marking this one outline right now. Once I have done this, the next step is the measurement for the back pattern. So with the torso that I have, the back was around 4 inches. So 4 inches, or we could just convert it into centimeters, which comes around like 9.5 9.5, or I can just make it like 9.5 as the centimeter scale. So I'm just going to be keeping that measurement over here, 9.5, and I'm just going to mark it. So from here, I have to make sure that my line is coinciding as a straight line. So first thing that I will do is I will keep this aligned, okay, to the pattern below, and I'll mark the measurement which I have as 9.5. So 9.5 over here. Okay, so 9.5 here. I will mark the measurement, and then before I draw the line, the most important thing is I need it to be done in a right angle. So I'm going to shift my ruler until I get a right angles position which is coinciding with my shoulder line. So with the shoulder line, I get it at right angle, and then we have to make sure that we are twisting, or we are slightly curving the outline. So like this. So at a right angle position. So with the right angles that we have over here, we are following the same, and we are going to mark the line. So it comes here. Okay, so this is the 9.5 as a measurement that we have. All right, so this is basically the back and the front necklines both joined together. This is how for any jacket or coat pattern, this is the same format that we follow. And then what we have to do after we are done with this one outline, we are basically going to make a small change, which is we are going to mark the center of this extension for the back neck that we have just done, which is 9.5 centimeters. I'm going to mark the center of it, which will come to around 4.75. So I'm going to mark that over here. And after that, this point where we finished the marking for 9.5, from there we are going to give slightly an outer expansion. This way we are going to give an expansion of around half centimeter. Okay, in inches it's usually a half an inch, or it's basically 1/8 of an inch. So it almost is equal to half centimeter. So we can mark so much. Okay, and mark this point over here, and then we have to curve and join these 2 points together. So when we are joining, we have to make sure that you use a curve ruler, or even we can manipulate with our basic curves that we have, and we have to join them in the form of a slight curve like this, you know, like an outward curve like this. I'll just try to show you how it looks. And we are going to join it to the center point which we just marked. Okay, so this is the outline that we are having. This is the measurement which we have just expanded. This is the front neckline and our back neckline all joined together. Okay, once we have done this much, let's go back into our same position to mark the outlines properly. Okay, so what we are going to do next is we have to basically start making the rest of the collar. So for the rest of the collar, the most important step is we have to check our width of the collar that we have to do. Now for a coat, it could be even a navy pea coat, or for even a simple trench coat, we generally give much wider collar outlines. Okay. So it can go up to around 5 inches, or even, for example, it can go up to 12 centimeters as well. It can go 12 or 10 centimeters according to the kind of design that we want. So right now I'm just going to give a nominal amount because we're just doing sort of like a make-believe over here. So something which matches with my bottom measurement over here. So what I'm going to do is I will be giving almost around 9.5. Okay, so I'm going to give again 9.5, which comes from this point, okay, from the extension that I've done. Okay, so this is going to be the center back of my collar. So the center back, I'll write it down over here then and there so that I don't forget. Center back of the collar, and then using this center back, we are going to be constructing the rest. So here we have everything done. So the next step is look at the notch point. We have the notch point over here, correct? We have already marked the notch point. From the notch point, now we have to give an extension so that we can make the notch clearly and we can also finish our collar properly. So from the notch point, generally what we do, whatever is the width we have taken for the center back of the collar, we generally go ahead by reducing almost 1 centimeter. or we reduce by 1 inch actually. So what we will do is we will reduce by around 2.54 centimeters or around 2.5 centimeters. So this here from the notch point, we are going to give an extension of 8.5 centimeter. Okay, and I'm not going to draw the line, I'm just going to mark it because I need to make sure about a certain point. Okay, so this is the outline that I have created right now. So here I'm getting the expansion like this, and I'm getting the collar which is quite bigger over here as well. But I can see that my notch point over here should remain at a distance of at least 1.75 centimeter. So I'm going to just make sure that there is a distance of 1.75 centimeter. So I will go ahead first and mark that distance. Here is my 1.75. So which means now I have to shift my line slightly more, which is why I did not draw it. I just marked it initially so that I know the points where to start and stop. And then this is where now my measurement is coming. This is the 1.5. And now once I have done with this outline, let me show you in the white base so it's clear. So now that we have done this, what we have to do is we have to basically curve and join. So again, it is recommended that we use a curve ruler rather than using a straight ruler because it kind of might not, finish well. So here also, since I do not have a curve ruler currently, I'm just going to connect these 2 points together for you guys to understand the concept. Okay, 8.5. So to 8.5 over here, this is the marking that I have done. I'll just first connect it. And then what we are going to do is we will be curving outside. So I have to make sure that I give the curve so it reflects well when I finish. This is the whole outline for the collar. Okay, so this collar, after we finish, it kind of like looks this way. It falls like this on the person. Okay, this is how we will get the curve or the edge of the collar. So this is the basic collar pattern for a coat. It will always change according to our style, according to the design and everything, and according to the space that we have to give, etc. So since we have there is also a choice, in case if we require, we can make the collar slightly smaller, which can correspond to the extension which we have given over here. So we can even make it something which is almost up to this mark. Okay, so we can reduce over here as well, and we can reduce this two patterns together, and then we can just join them. So this would give a very basic outline for a collar. According to the design that we have, we will always change the width. So remember, the width always remains changeable. It's not constant. It is according to the style that we have. Okay, if you want an expanded collar or a manipulated collar, we usually give a bigger outline. Okay, so I hope that these steps are quite easier to follow than the previous one, so which is why I'm sharing this with all of you. I hope this was helpful. Let's go ahead and finish this pattern right now.